see what they've got here, as both teams, like I said, have played it, not done so great on it, so they may or may not change up their bans, but there are some somewhat predictable bans potentially on this map. Thatcher is one that back and forth, so we might see the Thatcher ban. It depends on if they want to go that route or not, because, you know, they have the option. If they decide, we don't want to deal with our stuff getting canceled, cool. But they will not. The Hibana ban, I think, will probably replace that.
That's going to remove that one. Soniqs now have the choice. They are on the attack, so it would be a self-handicap, but they chose to take out the Thatcher here as well. But as we were talking about, oh no, they are going to go in that direction. We've been seeing Thatcher a little bit less and less.
It's been the other SAS operator for them every single time they've played it, pretty much. It's just been the Sledge, so it's surprising that they would go that route. But you know what? That's because they were maybe expecting Mirage to ban the Thatcher. If they didn't, cool, we were going to take out the Thatcher.
We are potentially going to see a counter ban come in for the defending side. We'll have to see if Mirage wants to go for it. Soniqs going to take out Valkyrie, which has become a mainstay pick for defender bans as well. She's just too universally useful right now for most teams, so she's getting knocked out quite often. And then we get the final one coming in here from Mirage now, and they will not go for the counter, no knocking out Cade, so there is going to be some good wall denial capability. However, keep in mind, of course, with the Maverick still in the play, that Cade or potentially Bandit play is not really going to mean much at the end of the day. We'll see Wamai removed, instead removing some of the utility mitigation.
I think the only surprise for me here is them picking the Thatcher instead of the Sledge.
Yeah.
The Slatcher instead of the Thedge. Just because that has not been their MO, but the rest of the bans are basically exactly what you'd expect from these two teams. Valk has been a mainstay ban for Soniqs quite a bit, and the Wamai ban is happened a couple of times for them here. So it's not a surprise. This is the way they want to play. However, that being said, it being predictable bans coming out just means Soniqs have that much more intel, because they can play into those predictability of those bans and have, you know, their plans not disrupted, at least for what they were anticipating.
An interesting pick coming in there on the 6th pick from Grixer, as a knock is actually going to be brought into the play, which we very rarely get here. Not even just, you know, for Clubhouse specifically. We've seen her try to be used a couple times on Cafe, but for the most part, it really hasn't worked out, at least not in the ways that I think teams were originally envisioning the use of her. Let's see if the Soniqs can find good use out of this out of this operator today.
And they didn't get a chance to see that 6th pick as well, of course, to the Mira, so they may not be anticipating those windows, which of course you certainly cannot hide from as Knock.
It's going to be very, very interesting to see how the Mirror setup plays. In here, another operator that very commonly gets banned out. So having her able to be used here is going to lead into a pretty interesting red stair setup here for Mirage. The rotates are going to be set up in a bit of a peculiar way, so that might slow things down a bit for them, but it is going to obviously give them greater capability to deny anything from the construction avenue and wherever they decide to put the second mirror window down as well.
It definitely becomes a choke point sort of thing, and of course, Soniqs, it being 6th pick, may not anticipate that, so their spawns are not necessarily going to reflect that until after they do their droning. They may have adjusted those spawns then to, you know, play around the windows, but that's going to be dependent on the IGL calls to actually be like, okay, we're going to go this way instead, if they want to play around it. Now, of course, they've got one just set up there from Dream. They're going to open up above it with the shotgun as well to be able to play overthrow C4 as needed to stop a plant, as they often happen on the other side of that server. So we are starting to get the wall open early. You see they've shotgunned up the wall a bit as well.
Swiss cheesed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, give them a nice appetizer on the way in.
It's been more and more of a common thing as of late. You'll probably see it opened in a much cleaner way at some point later in the match, and I'll try to point that out for you guys. But basically the main thing that this does, it just slows down the process. You can't get as clean of a line with Maverick as you normally would be able to get. As you can see, though, this is not really much of an issue for our pro players. Soniqs get past that without too much of an issue. Already having that avenue open and getting some intel onto the position of loading as well. But this is only one single avenue to approach the site with, and they need a heck of a lot more than that if they're going to have any success when they reach the time to execute here, which is going to be coming up in about a minute or so.
The advantage they have is banning the Wamai means they can take that shield a lot easier. They're still going to have to deal with Thomas's Jaeger plays to potentially stop whatever grenades they throw, but they have quite a few. They can burn some of those. You hear the ADS is getting burned potentially by Kansas flashes, so that's going to clear that out for them to be able to nade that shield, which looks like it's maybe still up to him. Hard to tell with this angle.
I think it's down.
Might have collapsed, yeah.
Yeah, it's
so
down.
that is going to force him out of position, which you see loading is now playing inside the other room. And he's going to have to try and fire through the holes in the wall that they've opened up to be able to play in there. They do have some C4s they can throw, and that is what loading is most likely trying to stay alive to be able to do if they try and go for that plant. But in the meantime, Dream is going to be backing him up on that hard angle into the wall. Grixer hasn't really found his entry just yet. He's still droning, most likely providing intel for the team before he decides his entry point for a late kind of mid-round flank. Although it is a little past the mid-round already, so he probably needs to get to work. Otherwise, at some point, you lose the utility of Knock if you're coming in that late anyways.
So we'll see where the knock will potentially find its insertion point, more than likely going around to hunt out these more extended defenders. But the first fight's actually going to occur as a direct push to the inside of the garage here. Benji holds off a push from Yeti. No follow-up from any other member of the Soniqs just yet, although it is on the way. You can see Rex and at least one other member trying to sneak in the garage, but the support setup is not there for it. Benji gets 2 more kills before finally falling to Grixer and leaving it into a 2v4 with less than 30 seconds left here. Kansan will now have to try to force his way in through the opening. Although so, you can see loading as well with the lineup, but the mirror window is lost. He's exposed, and suddenly Kansan takes him out as well. This is winnable for the Soniqs, but it's going to be tough due to the lack of access they have to the site right now, save for this balcony push. Kansan goes in, playing purely on pre-fire. There's a hop out as well onto the outside balcony. Less than 10 seconds left now for Soniqs to get this down onto the ground. They're going to try to do it in the corner, but they're so far surrounded. In comes Thomas for the shutdown. Grixer gets 1 more kill, but the time runs out, and we see Mirage claim the first round.
I got to put a lot of that on Benji, getting those kills from up in the rafters on the entries. That was absolutely crucial. Now, Yeti had already done his job, but the other player he got had not. So it was a good way to set them up for man advantage because time was dwindling down at that point, and I don't think we'd seen an early flank from the knock. Didn't really give him any kind of advantage in terms of map control or positioning. It was just not a great position to be in for the Soniqs because they were fighting against time. But I did like the Buck play countering the Mira, taking down that window to be able to start to get some angles into that room because that was going to be their big choke point. It was just came down to them not getting enough map control of the servers fast enough and then dealing with the players that were pushing back against it because of man advantage. Again, but that's where it was that snowball from Benji's kills, I think, is what really started the ball rolling because of the man advantage, because he was able to play garage. You need that garage flank. It's so important to attacks on the server. Yeah, maybe you can go without it. Maybe you could push instead from the bedroom into connector and things like that. But that's a much harder attack to make work.
It's much less conjoined with the actual garage push when you compare it to the build-up that you have with the balcony play. If you're moving in, obviously, from construction, those are basically 2 separate pushes, playing their own devices. While it is going to be a pinch against Cash, if you still have garage presence and potentially any other roaming members of the defensive side, it's going to be very, very tough to make that execute work. So the Soniqs fail in trying to take that garage control for themselves. The hold is brilliant from Mirage, and they're able to take the initial round here. They're going to stay upstairs as well, not falling back to the usual secondary, sometimes primary site for these teams, which would be the basement. They're feeling themselves at the moment, so they're going to try and go for the much more difficult site up here inside of Jim's bedroom.
I do have a feeling, though, the second time we come around to that site, the Soniqs may win it. I think they had potential there, and they just need to make some adjustments. That being said, now they're going to have to attack a different bomb site on the same floor. That requires a bit different of an opening. You've got to deal with the hot tub side of things, for example, some windows being played on that stairwell. The defenders themselves play so differently, even though the bomb site's like right next door to it, that it really forces you to attack very differently on this site. But we saw great efficiency last time in Super, trying to maintain that efficiency. However, loading, timing is there. He manages to get the Electric Claw just in time. Thankfully, Super was being patient about it. He just tested it. Got a little bit tased, but you know what? He didn't lose his... There we go.
He actually did lose the first one. So
oh, did he?
Yeah,
he had it on just enough.
He didn't cancel it quickly enough there.
Super.
So ends up losing that first exo. Thankfully, they have a Maverick, so ultimately they're going to be able to get past without much of an issue, as well as the fact that they have an Ace, too. So I think there's an abundance
there's
of hard
enough hard breach
the
there, right?
It's almost too much to a certain extent.
And they don't have the patch for the extra hard breaches yet either, so.
Yep, as we are keeping the competitive meta similar all the way through the stage here. We decided to hold off on implementing the most recent patch for these final play days, just so the players can continue playing with a familiar meta.
Thankfully, they're on land to be able to do that.
Yep. They have been playing from, and are still playing, of course, from the esports arena in Las Vegas. So having a good time there. We're here in the studio in Los Angeles today, so we're very happy to be here and very happy to have you with us. And so as the action continues to build up here inside of our second round, the Soniqs continue to build for a slow play. Lots of intel gathering over towards Logi at the moment here, but aside from that, not a whole lot of map control being taken. Yes, they have the balcony opened up, but again, no one's been able to successfully push in and take anything closer to the site just yet. Not that that's required here. This can be used as a big all-in type of push here, but that's very, very risky, especially if it's going to go unsupported from anywhere else on the map.
I think the mute's actually helping quite a bit here. You saw them pinging out some, well, as I say that, loading with a 2K from the C4. That's going to really put a crimp in this attack. Luckily, at least Yeti, again, had done his job before he died. But Kansan going down, that's a big fragger off the board. It's going to hurt things a little bit, especially if you had a lot of utility left. But nice trade back onto Nyx, at least. However, his ADS is already going to be up, right? You're not taking, it's more of just a roamer off the board that you have to deal with. There's still 2 C4s plus an impact left. and man advantage here. This is not looking great for the Soniqs, especially with time dwindling. Their inability to get through these mute jammers with either Yana's hologram or the drones to be able to get actual sight intel because Thatcher's banned. Well, they did it to themselves, right? So this is tough.
Oh, a nice find from Rexon here. At least he's going to be able to catch a Dream moving out of Logi. Grixer as well finding another one for themselves. Once again, the Soniqs coming out of nowhere with this play in the late round, and they might very well get this done here. Thomas with one trade out leaves only loading alive here, but he has the chance to deny a very low time bank remaining for the Soniqs to try and attempt their plant here, but they've got it down onto the ground, and Rexon makes a run past the bathroom to finish off the round. Beautifully done by the Soniqs as they once again come out with a burst in the final few seconds, and this time it works to net them the round.
Luckily for them, the amount of positions that the defense could be in was pretty limited, right? They didn't have a lot of intel, but you know where people are going to play because they have to play around windows, and they have to deal with playing safe. Because of that, there's certain positions they have to be hiding unless they're peeking those windows. I think that's what they took advantage of, right? They go, okay, well, I know where they're going to be playing. We just need to play aggressive. And Super even managed to get one of his 2 kills for the match. So that was a good start for things in terms of opening up for Rexon.
That's bold of you to go right to that assumption.
Hey, no, it's good for him because, he's already got one down. He only has one more to go. His job will be done at that point.
He's had himself a couple good games this season. He's had himself a couple where he's been able to pop off.
He has a few left to be able to do some work there. Try and bring up his stats
Stokes didn't want to cast this game because he was like, I don't want to cast Super. He's like, you want to wash his hands of that one real quick. So.
It definitely needs a lot of
washing.
However,
you're potentially calling the wrath of Super in a few minutes here when the game ends.
He's going to tweet me, guys. Oh, boy. Well, you know what? He's going to have to wait till after he gets his second kill to tweet at me. Then he's free to, because he won't be doing anything else at that point, so you might as well just...
Oh, my God.
No, I'm just kidding. I hope he does great, to be honest. Like, I kid because I want to see him do better. Because I think he's actually built a pretty good team. And they've been doing fantastic this stage, and I love to see it.
Credit to him, right? He got a massive amount of flack for the move that built this team to begin with.
Right.
Basically removing the entire previous roster, restarting.
In a way, kind of rightly so, in that it was a big loss for that team, right? Like those players obviously had to deal with the repercussions of it. But what he's built since has been fantastic, and I think that it's a good thing. But it was a lot of pain to go through, and I think overall this team has a lot of potential to just continue to go forward. If Super retires at the end of the season.
I love how you we're bringing us to a nice ending there, and then you just bam, one more hit right at the end. Either way, this round has started out quite slowly, as you guys might expect for a siege match here. The Soniqs, at the moment, just kind of building up their extra drone intel that they weren't able to get off those initial 30 or 40 seconds, and as well figuring out what the best path forward is going to be initially here. Now, you guys might note there's quite an aggressive setup from Mirage, at least in a couple places here. You can note Benji hanging out upstairs, and he's not the only one. Nyx as well, I believe, is supporting a red hole back from the other corner. Oh, that's a great angle from Benji, and it nearly works. But they know he's here now, so things are going to start to get a little bit more dangerous for him. There's a drone just below him as well that's working on confirming his positions. They can start working on figuring out how to get rid of him. This is on top of as Kansan starting to crunch the hold from Nyx. That's over here by top red by putting the additional pressure on construction. And actually, Benji's going to get taken out. Nyx was nowhere nearby to support them, unfortunately, as he had already fallen back. So Benji gets knocked out there, and that is going to be the Soniqs taking a 5v4 to start.
I really like the setup in terms of operator lineup coming out of Mirage. Trap heavy, denial heavy. They've got the Mozzie and the Mute to deny drones. They've got the Legion, the Cap Can, and they potentially got the Smoke if you count that as a trap, although it usually isn't pre-placed. But they're doing as much as they can to slow down this, even by having roamers playing up in Garage. It's a great idea, but they've got to live through it. They've got to pull off the time delay that they're hoping for, because if they get the kills and the map control early, from Sonic side, it's going to be a crush down on the bottom because, again, it's a situation where you know where most people are going to be playing. If you get the map control, you get the vertical control, you get the hatches that you need to open, you can play from there. And the denial that they're bringing won't deny Jackal. He's still going to be able to do his work to be able to catch those footprints and catch where those roamers are and try and control them. So they're in a decent counter position as well on the Soniqs. They just have to have good time management here. And right now, they're still kind of running around opening things up with 45 seconds left.
This has been an issue for the Soniqs in the past as well. Same for other teams here, just running down the timer too far before they actually have the opportunity to go in and open up these panels. We're going to see Moto, for instance, getting opened up at 30 seconds. I don't believe the kitchen is open currently, and I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think they will have the time to open it with the remaining time on the bank here. And Yeti nearly loses himself as Nyx was waiting for that opportunity for so long. He gets it, but is unable to complete the kill. Now is going to come the flood from the Soniqs as they have no time remaining to hold back. They have this one player advantage, and they need to use it. It'll start out well, as they're going to volley these trades back and forth between them and their opponents here, with the most recent one going to Mirage, with only 5 seconds remaining. They need to put their foot on the gas now and get this case down on the ground. They succeed, but once again, it's Grixer having to hold the line, and this time it won't work out as Dream gets the final kill, and Mirage takes the 3rd round.
Just great play of soft walls from Mirage. Every single one of those, they were basically setting up ambushes. You had the play inside blue. You had the play from the hallway, even like an Arsenal opening up the hallway with the impact nade. Just basically ambush after ambush as they flooded in, because there's limited entry points, right? There's only some ways. And when 14 seconds hits, the game tells you, and that's like the alarm going off, like, hey, they're coming in. Get ready to start shooting. And they were definitely ready to, but I did like to see the trades back and forth. You saw some great play from Soniqs actually trying to make that work as best they could. At the end of the day, if you lose all your guys before them, that's the end of the round.
Absolutely. So we'll see the inability to gather drone intel being probably the biggest thing that causes them a loss on the rush. Obviously, the lack of time and their inability to open up utility being the things that lead to that point, but the final nail in the coffin there ended up being the fact that they were unable to figure out where those ambush positions were coming from. As you had mentioned, we saw at least 2 of those soft walls get popped open.
Hello!
And probably a lot more than that.
It was a very here's Johnny kind of moment for them.
Yeah. On 2 different times as well, so it has to be a little bit frustrating for the Soniqs, seeing as things were going quite swimmingly for the first like 10 seconds of that execute. But
it was a great save of that impact nade too, having that in pocket still, not using it during setup.
Very, very good stuff indeed. So Mirage take the lead on the defensive side. For anybody that might be a little bit newer to Siege, that is somewhat expected, specifically for Clubhouse. This is a fairly defender-sided map, so we generally expect the defensive team to lead. Not by a massive margin, though. Generally speaking, seeing like 4-2s, 5-1s starting to stretch that. So we'll have to see what these 2 teams end up at once the half has concluded. Away from that, though, we are once again back at Cash. This is going to be the Soniqs' second attempt to take control of the site.
Now, like I said, I think this is one that's probably going to go a little bit better for Soniqs, but that being said, they also did show a bit of their attack to Mirage to adapt to that. They are going to be setting up with the typical mirror window again, which of course we know the Buck knows how to deal with of Kanzan. He's able to clear that out if he's able to get the angle. So once again, they need to push loading out of the room off that shield as early as possible. Yet he's got to do his job quickly on the wall, get set up, give them some extra time to work with. And Rexen being on that Capitao, that could be a fun one to make this work here. Capitao is occasionally banned on this map, partially because of the whole dealing with the Raptors. And that was the problem last time, is right? Benji on those Raptors, that's why they bring in the Capitao. To deal with him, just burn him right off of the catwalk if they can pull it off. Now, you can definitely die doing that. It's just as risky making that attack unless you come in from below. Even then, it's still a cat and mouse game, really, over that. I love the way that the catwalk plays out like that.
We even are seeing, too, the potential issues that plagued the Soniqs as they tried to get that bottom control. Unfortunately, the extended game from Mirage was also there as well, most notably played by Nyx, I believe, over towards the lobby. They were looking to hold things off and succeeded in doing so, as eventually Grixer pushing in with the Nook still ended up losing out in the final moments of that one, giving it over to the defense here. Nyx, in the meanwhile, is still going to be playing from that position over here towards the lounge, and will be the cutoff here for the initial push into Garage, although that push is coming a bit later on here. He just gets some good timing to deny a drone, and aside from that, still looking mainly to the player up in the rafters to do most of the heavy lifting here. More importantly, give the intel to Nyx when the need arises so they can go for this play. It's going to be a great nade if it's going to open up the soft wall there, as it's obviously going to limit the potential support that Benji can get. And indeed, there's going to be the incendiaries coming out now that will force Benji to change position. Follow up again, not to be seen from the Soniqs, however, so Benji's still relatively safe. This is the one that'll push him out, but still guarantees a minimum 1-for-1 with the kill against Yeti. He's going to go on the hunt for more as he goes to a bit of an awkward position on the stairs here. Grixer was able to trade onto Nyx at the same time, though, eliminating his support and now truly leaving Benji out on an island. He still has drone intel against him, though, and that's a great headshot from Super to grab Benji as he tries to escape here. The Soniqs have a 4v3 to play off of, but once again, they still need to go through the entire process of getting into the site. The big difference is this time, they have the ability to use rafters and pinch into this site here. And they're going to go right up on top of Dream. Not enough damage, and unfortunately for Grixer, he tried to go for a follow-up, exposes his head for a second time. That allows Dream to pick him off. Rexen at the same time trying to find his capability to entry in from Garage itself and maybe get this case down on the ground, but it's going to be Super dropped by a Nitro instead. That's the case going down. Kanzan with another exchange, but now Rexen is down, leaving only Kanzan in the fight, and 10 seconds left to frag it out. So close there for Kanzan to nearly get himself a headshot against one of the 2 remaining Mirage players, but he's not going to be able to find it. He takes a massive risk going for the res, leaves himself enough time to get the case down on the ground, and now Rexen's helping out here as he's taking down Thomas as well. Dream is all that's left, but he's gone on 2, and Rexon gets this clutch as the Soniqs give it an incredible round to themselves to keep them in control. Feels while he's in the middle of planting. Incredible stuff for the Soniqs.
And that's the thing is, I don't know if they knew that he picked him up.
Yep.
So I think they were pushing to hopefully pressure Kansan and try and catch him in a fight because they figured oh, there's 2 of us, we can trade. And it's fine because we win if we kill Kansan. But they did not anticipate Rexon taking that fight and just winning it. But that was the adaptations they needed. Grixer switching to the Ana instead of the Nook was a better play. Maybe not as effective as he would have liked because he did manage to get the grenade damage but then got picked. But at the same time, he put pressure on the stairs that offered some opportunity for Kansan to get into position at least. It's just, they cost them a lot to get into that site, especially the fights against Benji. Benji, I love that he dived deeper into the fight.
Yeah.
He said, you know what, you're going to burn me out in fire.
I'm not going to die trying to retreat. I'm going to die trying to kill you.
Right.
Like,
You just lit my fire. Like, he goes down and just fights everyone he can. It was just, it was a really good round overall, though, I think, for both teams. I think fantastic play. Down to the wire, down to those last-minute split decisions. Do I pick you up or do I put the case down? Absolutely made the right choice. But not only made the right choice, Rexon played it fantastically and saved that round for the team.
So sorry?
I was going to say, and Super got a second kill, so... So we're good for the rest of the game.
So Rexon and Grixer are proving to be worth their weight in gold as usual here. Super's contributions as well are on par, apparently, as the Soniqs take control of the tie point here, 2-2. Looking to take the lead here now, but once again, it is going to be against this whole upstairs here inside of gym and bedroom, where we saw already a very closely fought round between both of these teams. The Soniqs have learned a lot, though, as we've already seen from that most recent execute over onto Cash, and they've learned the same amount from the previous attempt on this site. So once more, looking to find success where might have missed them previously. And we're going to start to see Grixer moving in for intel. There is a bit more of an active setup deployed towards Cash this time as well from the Mirage roster, which I don't believe they did on the previous attempt, allowing for the Soniqs to flood in the late round there, and Mirage having limited space to play with. This time, it's going to be a much more arduous process for the Soniqs to fully clear this out and force the remnants of what would be Mirage's setup back into the site.
It also looks like Super was able to get the right timing this time and not stopped by loading the Cade Electric Claw. Because he did get the wall open, you could see fully, so he didn't have to rely on Yeti, which that takes up a lot more time, right? So that bought them some extra time getting that open early because they could start to try and pressure loading out of that position in the bathroom as much as possible. And when they do that, will help quite a bit. There we go. Nice use of the impacts, but doesn't stop it at the end of the day. Still get part of the wall open here, and he's actually going to pay for that. Ace as well doing some work. There we go. He's going to fight it, though. Commit it.
Once again, Benji not giving up until the bitter end, as it seems here. He tries to find a way to get out of there, but cannot find it, so instead commits to the fight. Does at least a decent amount of damage to Rexon as he's glowing red now, and once again gives himself only to even things up, though, at a 4v4. Not a massive advantage being pushed in the Soniqs' direction just as of yet here. It is going to obviously limit the amounts of defensive players available when the execute comes in, but for this site, that can be a bit of a double-edged sword here, as obviously the site is quite claustrophobic, so a full 5-man roster is going to be a bit harder to try and keep alive and controlled when compared to a smaller group. We're about to see the next member of Mirage get potentially tested here. Grixer priming a grenade to be chucked in. Dream is ready for it and goes for the full swing to make sure he kills Grixer. Nick's almost running into a nade and killing himself in the process, but still, everyone from Mirage holds on, stays alive, and once again, they push their advantage into their control again.
I love that they use all of this hard breach utility as much as they possibly can. Yeah, Yeti's dead early, so he can't do as much, but great work from Dream, though. He really pulled off as much defense as he could, getting 2 kills from in there, and Super gets his 3rd, so he is going for the record this time. I expect a solid game from him and a definite win for Soniqs.
Well, we'll see here as Thomas...
Not that round.
Yeah, Thomas will shut down this round, unfortunately. Once again, the Soniqs just losing far too much on their way to the site and not clearing out enough from Mirage in the process in order to make it work for themselves. So once more, our defenders strike back to take their own lead away from the Soniqs here and potentially put us at a 3-3 even scoreline if Soniqs can get some revenge, since we are going to be going back to Cash one final time for the 6th round.
Yeah, it's been an interesting back and forth in terms of who's able to win one site and then get it on the second time around, things like that. I definitely see a lot of counterplay happening here between these teams. They're trying to figure out how to both defend and attack it at the same time in terms of what the team's wanting to do. So, for example, CC, the second time, they knew what the setup was going to be. They were able to anticipate it. Same with the bedroom. The second time, they were able to anticipate how the defense was going to work in terms of loading, trying to stop the hot tub wall from being open. They got it open much faster. The one thing I would like to see from Soniqs in terms of adapting their attacks is Yeti living a bit longer. He does manage to get his job done because he's usually able to do it from a somewhat safe point of view, But once he gets the walls open or gets his torch going, you know, he kind of burns out quickly and dies.
Yeah.
And he's not able to impact the rest of the round. We know he can be a great clutch player late round sometimes if he has the opportunity to. And it's a great gun on Maverick as well. It's just he's not able to live long enough to really pull that off. But that's due to some great plays, some great commits by Benji, some great defenses by Dream, things like that. Really holding things down. Because I like to see that Mirage are willing to take a spot and hold it. It's like the last match that we just watched at Chalet, a lot of running back, a lot of retreating to site, a lot of giving ground to the attackers. Not so much on Clubhouse, partially due to the lack of stuff. And Yeti, of course, fulfilling the prophecy once again.
I like how you we propped Yeti up once again.
It's unfortunate. 0-6. I mean, he may not be flexing as much for the camera after this.
It's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, it seems, unfortunately, as Yeti will walk himself right into a very aggressive setup from Nyx all the way over on the west side of the map in Strip Club, where he's able to move forward, have that tiny little punch hole to work off of, and unfortunately Yeti does not check for it, or at least does not notice it. And as a result of that, another early kill goes the way of Mirage, an opener as well. And once again, as you mentioned, this is going to remove the Maverick from play. So that wall, which is currently going to be electric walled as well, that's pretty impossible to get open right now. Looking at what the remaining utility is on the attacking side, it's going to be tough to say the least. Their best bet realistically is going to be to try to get Kansan under it and then take out the floorboards there to be able to at least try and shoot through and knock out the electrical. But even that's going to be such a difficult task.
Right. Alternatively, they could just go for an approach from the bedroom side. Big risk, though. There is, of course, a number of defenders rotating back and forth as needed there. However, it looks like they've gotten some control of the map here, at least from the stairs. Kansan manages to get into the bedroom. So actually not too bad on the approach despite the loss. There we go. One loss to Mozzie, though. That's going to be a drone given over. If that's placed in a great position by Nyx, that could be really useful even after his death in making sure that the defenders have extra bits of intel, especially with Valkyrie banned. Those cameras are not available.
We're going to see a quick opening of the construction wall. A quick pick as well here to even out the player count from Kansan. Taking out Thomas this time. It's going to remove the Jaeger from play. Arguably one of our more aggressively pointed ones on Mirage at this point. But still, over a minute remaining. It's going to be a loss that they'll certainly miss at some later point in the round here. Soniqs still building up for pretty much an entirely focused construction push due to the lost utility and the inability to work their way in from the actual catwalk itself outside. A little bit of cleanup here, it seems, on the Heart Breach wall, just so they can get themselves through it without too much of an issue. Dream will be powerless to stop that for the most part, as they're simply sitting back and waiting for the Soniqs to give the go signal. You can see a couple of members here still trying to set things up for Mirage deeper inside of security as well, so that they can be as prepared as they need to be when this push finally comes through. Rexon getting a slight angle from construction, tries to see if he could punish anyone for Mirage. That might have been more aggressively pointed, but nothing found here. They're going to have to walk right into the setup, and Kansan is the first to move forward here. Dream falters back. Rexon will also take out Nyx, but Benji starts to fire back, as does Loading with the Nitro Cell. That's Kansan and Super both getting knocked out. Another great shot from Dream to take out Rexon, and now Grixer stands alone in a 1v2 here as he has down Loading. Gonna try to go for another one, but misses the opportunity. Now he's had himself pinched. He'll have to be so careful about how he plays this. Goes for the aggressive swing on Benji, but once again, he survives from the garage catwalks as they take another round for themselves.
We're just not going to get a one-sided match today. Just a back and forth. Mirage with some great plays there. That finally they did fall back after they, fought as much as they could for the bedroom side, for the stairs, and just got into great positions. But I mean, obviously the early kill into Yeti made such a huge difference in that round because he didn't get his job done first, and that was a big impact because they weren't able to get the positions they needed to. I mean, Benji could just get free reign in the garage at that point because they weren't going to pressure him. They weren't going to be able to get any cross angles from the wall not being open, so he could play a lot more freely in there. You saw them setting up the rotates for that as well as the angles to give them position that he got from the kill at the end of the round. They just didn't have a lot, and you saw them try to fight angles. Grixer trying to fight through the server window, trying to just duel someone hiding behind the bomb. It was not an ideal position to be in. They played it to the best of their ability, though. I think Soniqs tried to make that round work. Maybe they needed a bit more utility, but I was surprised that the utility still left in pocket. For example, Grixer holding onto a Claymore instead of, for example, setting it up at a window in case of a potential jump out, stuff like that. It seemed like maybe it was a little bit panicked, that they were having to adjust and maybe just did not have really everything where they needed it to be.
Yeah.
Plus losing a drone to the Mozzie, that certainly did not help.
losing the drone and then just not having enough aggressive utility there to work themselves into a proper secondary angle to push that site with. As you were saying, it would have needed to have been the balcony, and they just had no realistic way of getting it. Would have had to go for a full roam clear over towards the lobby, make sure they didn't get pinched from there because of the heavy red setup. Like I said, take out the floorboards and then try to find it from there, and that was just way too much work for them having to do. Even at the start of the round there, as a sudden shift of their overall strategy, put way too much on them, so they try to go for the construction push instead, and unfortunately, once again, do not have the proper intel or defensive utility clearance to properly work their way in there, as we see plenty of nitro cells and other defender-sided utility ready to throw out when that execute comes in. We're already 30 seconds, though, into the second half, as you guys have probably noticed by this point. Mirage now on the attack, Soniqs on the defense. With only 2 rounds built up so far here, they're going to need a strong start on this defense. Otherwise, we could be looking at another surprise here today with Mirage rocketing their way to a victory.
Looks like a bit of denial setup, similar to what we saw when we saw the Arsenal being defended by Mirage, because we have a different starting spot, right? Last time we had Cash being started as the first defensive side, and then now we have Arsenal, and they're going for similar, let's bring drone denial with the mute and the Mozzie. Let's bring Kenzen on the Legion so we get traps. But the difference is they're going for a little bit more roam support in terms of Rexen on the Vigil, so he can go around a little bit more flexibly and hopefully not get caught out. But then they're also bringing the Melusi for a little bit of extra denial. I imagine on site, they have a lot of impacts for soft breaches as well. Like Kanzen's used 2, we just saw Rexen use 1. Yeti's got 2 in pocket as well. We saw how useful those were for little ambushes towards the end of the round if it gets to that. But it doesn't look like they're doing a great job of denying map control, as we're a minute 30 in, and they've got control all the way down to entrances in the basement, which is something we didn't see when Soniqs were attacking the site.
Already a lot of control going towards the Mirage roster, but at the same time, this needs to be kept in mind. There is a bit of ignorance on Mirage's part right now that they have not cleared out the upstairs hold from the Soniqs position more towards Cash over there, so that is still potentially going to come back to bite them in a sort of late round situation. It is looking like they are forcing that back for the most part, so it won't end up being that big of an issue at the end of the day here. The greater looks of things, but now that we've got Mirage in position, we could be looking at actually a very early execute coming out from them. They're working on pinching out blue pressure also, as we can see Nyx actually having to fall back towards the main stairs a bit more, but here's the upstairs hold that we were worried about. It's Super going to be creeping up currently onto Nyx, but never mind, he's got an even easier target loading, waiting over the Moto hatch, trying to work on getting that open, or at least holding it for his teammates. It'll fall none the wiser, and now someone is going to have to keep constant overwatch on that because Super will remain a threat for the rest of this round. They'll push in though, and it doesn't seem like the Soniqs are ready for this. They work their way in, 2 clean kills going their way. Kanzen will respond from the inside of blue on his own regard here, and he's got potentially more to come his way, but now the case is down, and he along with the rest of the Soniqs need to push back in. It's a good start as Kanzen finds an initial repick, but Nyx and Thomas trade it right back, leaving everything on to Grixer, but he too has another surprise as he's worked his way all the way back around to Moto. Nyx does have the top down hold, but he currently has no angle on the case from here. He needs to hop down, get aggressive and challenges. He'll do it, but he doesn't fully kill Grixer, and Grixer gets it back instead. It's the Soniqs that are going to steal the first round in the second half as Grixer does it again.
That moment when you melee instead of doing what you needed to do. It reminds me of the Xbox days with the stick where you'd accidentally hit it when you're trying to lean.
Oh, that would mess you up.
Right.
I can't relate to the console woes, unfortunately.
Right,
but
right. It was just one of those things you'd see, but you could tell the panic. When you see a move like that, you know it's panic time. But unfortunately, the shortcuts there, they took shortcuts on their attack. They tried to just, we'll just avoid the roam. We're not going to play the game of they deny our roam. We see all these mute jammers and Mozzie Pests up here. We know they're up here then. They wouldn't put those there if they weren't up here. We'll just avoid it. And obviously that got him in the back.
Credit to them, they did get to the site. They got to the end point of the round.
They did a pretty good job giving,
ignorance.
Yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, the unaccountability of specifically Super, along with a couple other players there, made their post plan way too unstable, way too chaotic. And as we see, they're unable to bring out a clutch from Nyx. Very unfortunate for him as well. Hopefully not going to phase him too much here, as there's still quite a bit of a game to focus on. And Mirage as well, still in the lead here at 4-3 with an easy opportunity to swing things back, as the Soniqs are now going to go for the upstairs gym hold.
It doesn't matter if Mirage's ahead. Super's going to carry them to the end. This is Seth's game. He's got 4 kills. He's going to be like achieved last. Dude,
I think he hears you. He's like stepping it up more and more here.
Good. I want to see that.
It's like negative reinforcement.
Right,
you know?
right. I want to see him put Kanzen to shame and somehow fix all the stats for the whole stage, like as a combined one, by just this one match.
Yeti, unfortunately, still with the donut there, but has contributed at least with an assist, and obviously is not going to be the make-or-break component anymore on the defense. So
well, at least this way he can put down traps before he dies, right? He could do something. Well, I mean, like, you know, he had the job as Maverick. He's like, okay, I'll burn the wall and then I'll die. He's like, now I'll put down these Banshees and then I'll die. Like, as long as you give him something he can do before he dies, then he can contribute.
This is always one of the weird things, and Soniqs isn't the only NAL team that potentially has this issue too. I think that we also see this from East Coast, that one player, you know, is just like alive and topping out the scoreboard one week, and the next week, 0.
I mean, at least we're seeing the rest of Soniqs pick it up. Like
they always have the consistency of Rex and Grixer, so to fall back on.
They might be down a point right now, but you're seeing the rest of the team pick it up for the most part. Even Super, you got 9, 8, 6. 4. We can ignore the 0 for the moment. I imagine Yeti might pick it up. Now that he's got a chance, he's going to live at least halfway through the round, very likely, just because he's on defense. So that's a good sign, at least. Get some time to actually get some intel. He's doing that exactly right now, actually cycling through cameras, looking to see if he can get some idea where they're attacking from. They don't have as much intel denial this time, right? You don't see the mute, you don't see the Mozzie. They're going to be relying a little bit more on things like shields. They're going to be relying a little bit on their Meister Evil Eyes, which of course are now, as I say that, getting taken out. So they're losing some of that intel already. So we'll see. Maybe the holograms from Grixer will make a difference here in terms of providing that intel. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether or not Mirage take the shortcuts this time, or if they're able to actually properly clear and make sure they can make this attack work. It's a different floor. It's a different site. But it's one where they've got to have priorities, because you can run short on time very easily, as we saw from Soniqs having to push in very aggressively in the last 15.
Overall, much slower process already here from the Mirage roster, taking their time with the opening clear, and off of the initial burst, not worried too much about the Jacuzzi balcony, although it does seem they shifted quite a few players over here and are now going to prioritize that Benji in the meanwhile too. We saw him moving around towards Kitchen earlier on here, and this is on top of Nyx also with that balcony now open. They've forged themselves forward, loading, also finding another pick. Kanza with a great flick of himself to deny the refrag onto loading there, and Thomas still taking control for Mirage as he finds the next one again. Super Nyx spraying it out as well. Great transfer onto the second one. As although things start out a little bit rough at the end of the first attacking round, the second one goes as clean as can be, as Mirage will stay in control.
That was a great play from Nyx. I mean, they lined themselves up a little bit for him. We're just trying to flee right there, but man, great coordination. Now, of course, Soniqs, being on the losing foot, are going to take their time out, try and recollect themselves, figure out what they're doing wrong, because this is a team that we would be ending up who wins the most gunfights at the very end of the round. Like, honestly, as much as I dislike that aspect sometimes, in terms of I'd like to see a little more of the strategy coming out ahead. That being said, it's just down to sometimes that game sense at the very end, knowing where the people are, coordinating well, making sure you hit your shots. We saw, for example, the Arsenal round where if he would have just hit his final shot, he would have won the round, and it was just him pulling back and then losing the gunfight when he went to repeat. But that's what it's coming down to. But that shows that these teams are being neck and neck right now, and that while this is a map that Mirage have not won in the past, they've played it quite a bit, they're comfortable on it, and they're showing that comfort today. Soniqs maybe haven't played it as much, they also have not won on it. So, as you said, this has been a map for them that was pretty good historically, but right now they're showing definitely some weakness on it.
Yeah. For sure, as things boil down to these final few rounds here, 3 remain inside, or at least 4 actually, remain inside of our regulation timer here. Keep in mind, folks, that our teams are fighting to be very, very close now to try and make it to our next major in Sweden. You can see that the Soniqs are in contention for that right now at number 4. But it's not fully secure just as of yet, as far as I'm aware. They still need to try and get themselves another win or two to make sure that is the case. And losing here today against Mirage would not have been in their grand plan. So that might set things a little bit awry as they try to finish out the season tomorrow and await the results of those games. Anyway, getting into it, though, we do have the upstairs hold once again from the Soniqs. They're going to go for this gym defense once more. We've already got a couple members of Mirage working their way into the building, too, although not anywhere dangerous. Just Thomas taking control of the bar, and I believe we have Benji potentially looking at a kitchen push at some point in the next few moments.
I gotta imagine they were anticipating probably going to CC as the site, because you see the Capitao being brought from loading. They did trick them up a little bit by going to bed, and this is going to, you know, it might be something that throws them off slightly, but at the same time the attacks aren't so drastically different that the utility they bring is going to make a huge difference. They're just going to have to clear things a little bit differently, and of course they know the site by now, but nice job. I think they cleared that from below, essentially. Open up the mirror window.
Looks like it for the most part.
Always nice when you can pop those remotely, and you're just like, well, now I have a hole into your room.
You've lost your utility, and they do it once again here with the second one as well. We got a great example of how that first one worked.
Fantastic job.
Beautiful hunting work there by the Mirage team on making sure they isolate out those mirror windows. Not too much delay. Unfortunately, gotta keep a better watch on the Overwatch there. Kansan sneaks into the gym, and Nyx does suspect something happening there, but catches it a little bit too late, so he'll go down first on the outset of this round, and the Soniqs will maintain a 5v4 advantage.
Too bad, because the fire utility would be pretty useful mid to late round, but nonetheless, it wasn't necessary for this site. Grixer, though, taking down loading is gonna make things really hard for them here. Now they lose their Maverick, which probably wasn't super necessary, but would have been pretty useful depending on how they wanted to attack the site. There's quite a few areas they could approach from, but they do at least have this wall open. Dream was able to do his job, and then we looks like we have a nice big hole open up on the CC wall. So they're not in the worst position despite the loss of utility. They still have a little bit left as well. They've got some breach charges on Thomas. As I say that, Thomas gets the kill into Grixer to make sure that he still holds those. And then we've got Claymore and some flashes. A fair bit of utility. C4 and impacts, though, to still to deal with on the defense. This is now coming down to duels. You see them squaring off, trying to find where each other's at. Defense is trying to hold angles to make sure that they know as they come in, and that if they lose their fight, at least their teammates can try and pick it up. But this is a situation where whoever wins maybe one or two of these is in a great position, man advantage, to actually make a push, and it's going to be Rexen. So this is going to be pretty Soniqs focused, and they do manage to pull it off, thanks to Super getting his 5th.
As Super continues to improve his own stat line. Is Rexen, I believe, that gets the real, once again, finishing frag or finishing play there, as he's able to have that nice swing from the inside of Logi to take out both of the pushing members of Mirage, knock them out, and more than anything, keep the Soniqs in contention for play here to still take this matchup here. Looking very, very much going up to a 6-3, and Mirage taking that one now. It's much, much closer with the Soniqs inching within 1 round's reach of Mirage. They are going to head back down to the basement here, where they had a relative amount of success previously. It has been unlocked for play yet again, so they'll look for a second win to try and tie things up at 5-5.
Well, Soniqs definitely could pull it off here, but being behind is not great. Could end up in a position where they have to go to overtime very easily, and that's not a great place to be because you're losing points. You're just shedding points, guaranteeing you can't get as much. Like you said, they want to lock down that Sweden trip. They want to start booking their tickets, and it's going to be hard to do so if they can't lock down a win here.
Let's see, once again, as the Soniqs will continue to deploy into a fairly standard basement setup. No huge surprises here, especially when it comes to operator selections as well. Still going to see the mirror window in play for Grixer. So we're going to see the usual amount of expected support here, such as the Banshees coming out from the Yeti, the Electric Claws and Ivy hatches, and of course, your usual spread of ADSs and Toxic Babes coming in from Super when the push finally reaches the basement. On the attacking side, it is a very similar flow to what we've seen in previous rounds as well. Still going to keep the Cap Town play for loading and an assortment of hard and soft breach beyond that.
It's been great to see Rexen actually come up too, because I know that there was a period where he struggled for a while as a pro player and just really kind of lost his groove, and he's really found a nice spot on this team, and it's good to see like those people that didn't just wash out and end up back in Challenger League and stuck there, they actually make it come back.
Yeah.
I mean, Yeti's one of those stories. He's left and come back quite a few times now. So this team is the misfit toys at this point.
Well, misfits indeed, but finding quite a bit of a reputation for themselves this year so far, especially for Grixer and Rexen, having multiple top stat categories here inside of the NAL for the previous 2 stages, and I believe they are in contention, if not currently under control of those same stat lines for this stage as well, as they've very much been dominating it previously. Away from that, though, taking a look at what the Soniqs are looking to build up inside of this first minute, it's not a whole lot here. They're playing the waiting game right now as they wait and see what Mirage is going to try and execute towards, and more importantly, the speed with which they will do so. The Soniqs obviously keeping all their players downstairs in the site this time is going to make things a little bit more straightforward for the eventual hold in the late round, and that is also, hopefully, if they're playing utility correctly, going to slow down the dissension for Mirage.
I think at this point, Mirage are not going for the shortcuts this time. They're looking to, even though there's no one upstairs, they're droning it out. The fact that they're not finding anyone, I think, is making them drone it more because they expect someone to be up there. So they're spending that extra time. Luckily, on this bomb site, you can spend a lot of time. If everyone's downstairs, you can spend 2 minutes setting up, getting your utility in place, getting your angles in place, droning the defenders, finding out what their site setup is. You can spend that time, and they have been spending that time. This is a good way for Mirage to play it. However, when they actually come to the execute, they need to have those players locked down in those positions, or you get surprises. Last thing you want, especially when it's a 5v5 in the last 30 seconds, is any surprise players. So they're going to be looking to try and pick off anyone they can early. You see some fire coming out as well, trying to clear out inside blue. And that's going to make sure no one's playing behind there. Thomas, though, with the first kill on Yeti again, who's still sitting at that 0 stat line for his kills. Not looking great, but you know what? Soniqs have been able to pull back anyways. And Rexen is not here. This is not good. Grexen's going to have to pick it up. He's nope. Grixer.
They have full control.
Oh.
Yeah, no, you're good. They have full control over this church position right now. You can see the crosses between Nyx as well as one other player. Thomas, however, at the main stairs, finally going to be dealt with, and Kansan finishing up not just Thomas, but Benji holding the blue oil wall as well. Unfortunately, it'll all be for naught as Mirage still come back, still have way too much control, even beyond Thomas's position by the main stairs. You can see someone else steps right into place to take up that very same one and make sure that the Sonics can do nothing from the inside of their site. Beautiful execute coming out once again, and fairly early on as well there. Good pacing on that coming in from Mirage, and it's put them onto map point.
Definitely a situation where I think Soniqs could have been a little more patient. They probably should have played a little more tight in positions where they couldn't be got out just as easily. They took maybe a little too many fights early on, and then losing their fraggers, losing players like Rexen, and then Grixer right after. That leaves you in a position where you're going to have to try and clutch without your fraggers. You're going to have to hope to catch players on surprise, and man advantage was clearly in the attacker's favor right there. So just not an ideal position to be in. Arsenal has been mixed back here, I think, and Mirage, when they didn't take shortcuts and they took their time on it and actually figured everything out, much better execute. It's definitely a tough position for Soniqs to be in, because the best they can hope for now is to force that overtime. And honestly, I could see this being 7-5 if Soniqs don't change something.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I mean, 7-4 certainly in the cards here, although this site is going to be a difficult one to crack, as the Soniqs have already, again, quite a bit of success for themselves here. Not to mention, again, Mirage, a lot to work for, a lot to deal with, even just in the utility department to even get close to this site. So this is oftentimes where the attackers will fail and the defenders will find quite a bit of success. But it's certainly not impossible for Mirage to get the job done here, especially now that they've already made adjustments on that basement site. This just might be a little bit different up here inside of Cache. Let's see, though, as they have spawned out. And once again, they're bringing that similar flare, not to mention that, but again, still having Capitao in play means that Rexen is going to be in a tough spot when they finally get into position to pressure him, as you were mentioning previously when we were in the first half.
And it's interesting, too, that they're going with a little bit different hard breach lineup, bringing the Ace instead of the Thermite. Now, of course, they have backup, right? They have the Maverick to be able to help open the wall, which is traditionally what you have to do, but they also have Capitao with the extra hard breach that they can use if they need it, maybe on a soft breach wall, something to set things up. Plus, they've got the soft breach ability of Benji on the Zofia, so they've got plenty to open up walls, open up angles. You see the Ace opening up a nice angle into server right there. So they're setting up for this, but now, how are they going to finish opening that wall? That's the real question, because they didn't finish opening it with Ace. It's risky at that point to try and use Maverick for it without getting shot. And, I mean, trying to stick a little hard breach circle on there somewhere to try and maybe open up the rest of the hole, that's just asking to have your head shot.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
They're actually kind of in a tough spot by failing to finish this wall.
That is going to leave Mirage with, once again, no easy path into the site. They are going to open it up, at least in part here, using out one of the Ace charges to find an opening on the bottom right side of it. Benji as well going to take a lot of heat here from somewhere as he, I believe, tries to put pressure on the garage door, but instead is probably just going to get a couple bullets from Rexen sent his way instead. Still over half of the round remaining, though, so there is plenty of time for Mirage to figure out where they can potentially still find an insertion point, not to mention that the wall over here towards the balcony is at least partially open, so you still have the capability for someone to maybe play around it, just not necessarily using it as a pushing avenue. Members of Mirage still now trying to focus on getting garage control for themselves, but that is going to be problematic as well. It's low timed right now. Rexen is still very ready for a fight to come his way, and on top of that, still has another toxic gas grenade to try and throw out here should they go for a push against him. Yeti will finally get on the board here inside of match point as he takes down Nyx. I think his first kill of the match, leaving the Soniqs once again in a great position as now Grixer will jump into the fight to take out Loading as well, leaving Mirage to be a shell of their former execute here. Dream, Benji, and Thomas is all that remains in the final minute of this attack.
Rexen doing a great job as well, holding off the catwalk. There we go, Yeti with two more. He's picking it up. Maybe you heard me. Maybe they're playing it on the arena speakers.
The inspiring presence on the cast today, apparently.
This is why I, talk bad about them to help them, right? Yeah, I'm a motivational coach.
Well, either way here, it's all fallen to Benji in a 1v5. Fairly futile, and you can see how that is the case as he tries to work his way in. Rexen will shut things down on the final kill.
One of them has to, because there's no draw.
I'd be very curious to see how much differently this match would have gone if we had Yeti kind of contending in the way we saw him in the last round.
I think this would have been a lot more one-sided.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think as well, because we saw Yeti's performance. I think even just on the last play day, he was showing up with plays like that
Or
almost every other round.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the last round there. So yeah, I'm very curious to see, because you were mentioning as well, and I pretty much agree with that, where we've been seeing a lot of these late round situations come down to the gunfights.
Right.
So if Yeti's in there and he's a little bit more consistent throughout this match, I think we might have seen a much more one-sided fight going to the Soniqs here.
And keep in mind, I think Yeti's a fantastic player.
Of course.
And so I'm just expecting a bit more of him from those early rounds. It was definitely something that I think maybe it just took a while for him to find his stride a little bit. And maybe after that last round, I know how hype he gets. He was probably screaming quite a bit after that last round. The classic "let's go" pounding the table kind of thing. But let's see if that carries in after the momentum loss from timeout, though, right? Because now he's got to get rehyped for this round.
Really, even in terms of fragging capability across the board, actually, you can kind of compare the presence of Yeti somewhat to loading, as well as Nyx there. And then again, we've got our two very heavy, or three, I guess you could say, top fraggers here for either team. 3 moving into triple-digit territory, or just 2, rather, on the Mirage side. It's a big battle between those top fraggers oftentimes for control of these late round scenarios. We are going to go back to the basement as well for this final round inside of regulation to decide if the Sonics can indeed take this to OT, or if they're going to walk home with no points today and give it all to Mirage.
I think this is where the Sonics are really going to have to be unpredictable. They're playing in a bomb site where it can really be locked down from all sides, right? They're not playing the roam game. They really need to be unpredictable when the execute comes at that point. It's a situation we saw last time where Mirage took their time, they got set up, they started getting picks because Sonics just tried to be aggressive. They can't do that again unless they've got the intel to make it work. Like, hey, I see Thermite hanging out by the hallway on drone. Cool, go get a pick. Those kind of situations, fine. But where you're just challenging, just to slow them down to challenge, did not work last time. And maybe, maybe after the tactical timeout, they might feel a little more warmed up on their aim, but I think it's risky. They're going to have to play smart positions, and they're going to have to try and get players of Mirage to do predictable things on their attack because there's limited entry points. The upside for Mirage, they may be limited, but there's quite a few entry points into the site, and they have the utility to get hatches open, to get things set up, to open soft walls, to open angles. So it's going to be all on Sonics to play that smart.
All right, so already halfway through the round here, and it's been a fairly quiet one so far, save for the occasional popping of a hatch or so. As we see Mirage already working to get things open for themselves here, and apparently dodging nitro cells also. No damage going on to any member of Mirage out of that one, even though it was very, very close. A well-placed one, in my opinion, from the Sonics. Just the timing on the actual detonation a little bit off, ultimately, and does not allow them to take down any of these attackers here. That's also one of only 3 nitro cells available for the Sonics here. That does mean, of course, we can see play come in over the next few moments, but Mirage still continuing to tear apart this setup here. We can see nice abuse of the Banshee mechanics. They get within range of it from a top-down perspective and just shoot it out nice and easily from the safety of Kitchen.
Definitely in a position where they're actually clearing out a lot of utility. They managed to start pushing a lot of the players of Sonics into tighter positions. You see explosions go out left and right. Church now is getting pressured from Moto. The angle, however, works in Kansas' favor. Yet it's another kill.
They're walking right up and so ready for every single fight coming their way. The timing on the swings from the Sonics this time is a massive improvement from what we saw against the previous basement attack coming out from Mirage, and it's enough to completely shutter this play from Mirage and throw us into OT, with Mirage suddenly looking a lot weaker on that attack than we saw on the previous attempt. They're going to go right back into that fire as well. They're staying on the attack for overtime, and they're going to go potentially attack the same exact site, it looks like.
Well, when Yeti, shows up, it's flawless round time, it seems. And that's why we're saying him not doing so well in the beginning was the reason that Sonics was down points. Just because, you get a lot of work out of Rex and Grixer, but I think you need the support there from people that are staying alive a little bit longer, even if it's just to provide flank pressure, things like that, to be able to set those kills up for the other fraggers. Losing manpower early and always being at a disadvantage of it because of that wasn't great. However, when he's popping off, you saw the hype there I was talking about on the camera as well right after. He's ready. He's ready to win this solo if he has to at this point to make up for the previous rounds.
A lot more work to be done now if that is going to be the case, as we need 2 more rounds, not 1 for either of these teams to claim it, and we've got 3 to settle it in. So Mirage will once again have an opportunity to correct the mistakes made on that previous execute, secure the basement territory before committing to it, so we cannot see the Soniqs aggressively swing as potently as they did in the previous round here. Big difference there is they did have themselves the stable main stairs pressure on the attack that went successfully from Mirage. That time they did not. Ended up forcing it into Moto and the main stairs, and I believe back blue all at the same time. The members of the Soniqs were far too ready for that potential play, shutting it down in nearly every single avenue that was played into. This time, they're going to bring a very similar flair to the setup as this round gets started. And we've got Mirage players out on the board.
We're definitely looking to see what they can do setup-wise to delay things. They've got the electric claws, they've got the mirror windows. They're trying to make sure that if they get in, it's going to be hard to get the angles that they want to get. Not a lot of soft walls to use necessarily. You got the classic 2 mirror windows, the one facing out into the hallway from Church, and then the one facing into blue, so that Grixer can help support Rexen. Because in order to pressure Rexen, they have to try and find angles and start pushing in very aggressively to catch out the player behind that. That being said, though, they did bring the Capit out for that. We saw them last time burn out behind there. That's a great way to clear that with very low risk. So if Loading's able to get in a good position to just drop that fire down, there's not much Rex can do. However, trying to take that and fight Grixer, who's holding the cross, is going to be difficult to get blue. So you're definitely going to have to drone this out, make sure they understand what blue looks like before they try and put it into, or what you look like, because you're blue.
Blue with an E. Blue with an E.
Abadie.
Yeah. So Benji's going to try to work his way in over the next few moments here. Still, more than anything, keeping an eye on that Church rotate just in the event we would see a member of the Soniqs try to go for the cross, or more importantly, the kill against Benji. Neither of those going to happen, though. The player in blue will successfully retreat further into the site. That is playing into the hands of Mirage to some extent, though, as this is exactly what they want. What they don't want, though, is the mobility that we're currently seeing from the Soniqs roster. Same as the last round here. They want to keep changing up their positions, play a bit more amorphously, and make it much more difficult for Mirage to have that execute intel to come in with one fell swoop and end this round on one big play. They want to make this as slow of a process as possible. They've done a fantastic job of slowing it down up until this point. I don't know if it's Saul, the player that I believe is positioned a little bit further out towards dirt, so that could potentially go unnoticed here, as Super is indeed still committed a bit deeper here.
Big brain in it. Well, it's hard to tell if they've been able to clear out as many of the Banshees as we saw previously from when Mirage was on the attack, because Yeti's trying to do a similar thing. It's great for when they go to drop somewhere, right? You've got a positioned Banshee, so when they drop, they immediately get hit by it. The only downside is you're often setting up a position where it's kind of exposed a bit to the top, and we saw that being exploited before for Mirage on their attack. But situation now where pressure's starting to come in, Super is going to have to win this gunfight, or at least delay for as long as possible. There's 30 seconds left, and Dream is the first to fall, actually, against Grixer.
Nade's going to get chucked out by Nyx, and it actually works. Traps Super in a corner that he cannot escape from, so one of the toxic babes is going to go unused. Loading, in the meanwhile, has snuck into Arsenal. No one on the Soniqs seems to be aware of it until they hear the audio cues. It will unfortunately get denied, though, and that's despite Thomas sneaking off another kill against Yeti. He's now alone here against a 1v3, and without vision past the mirror window, Kansan will have a very easy time shutting him out in the final seconds of the round. It goes the way of the Soniqs, and they put themselves on map point.
I love that attempt to get the plant down, though. That was super sneaky, and there was so much distraction going on. Had they been able to continue to pressure, I think, from dirt and keep that angle open, they might have been able to stop the throw from coming. It depends on the exact angle to the player throwing. You saw C4s and stuff like that come out to try and stop the plant. But at the end of the day, just too little time left, right?
Yep.
It's funny when you run short on time on Arsenal attack because you have so much free time at the beginning to just set up, to do whatever you want. The only problem is that setup doesn't necessarily get you in. It's just taking control of everything above it. You still need to go in, and you either need to drop in or you need to walk in, and both of those have so many traps and angles that you have to worry about that you can't always clear ahead of time. Not to mention, just because you have top control and you're staring down the hatch doesn't mean someone doesn't look back up through it and shoot you in the face.
It also doesn't mean that the angle is of any use ultimately at the end of the day. As we've seen plenty of times on sledge play across numerous maps. You look at Villa, you look at Cafe as well. So many of those top-down setups that ultimately lead to nothing are seen quite often.
You need it achieved in the kitchen, just opening up the floor and just taking those angles through the beams.
Yep, pretty much. So bit of a risk being played overall when you're on the attack on that site, is it can be very, very difficult to make the transition from the first down to the basement, especially with the limited time that attacking teams often give themselves to pull off the execute. It'll be a little different, however, here inside of our first OT match point, as we're going to go back upstairs one final time for a hold from Mirage inside of CCTV and Cash. They will try to equalize this and then look for victory on their last attacking round. The Soniqs, of course, now back on the attack for this one, and we shall see what they have to offer us as they're bringing a lot of the same flair, very heavy emphasis on the hard breach with 3 of them brought to the table. Kansan's back on the buck, and Grixer, of course, in the aggressive role that he needs to be in, has brought the Ana.
I tell you what, if you're Yeti right now, you're going to be very damn careful. Because last time he died on this attack, did not work out so great for the Soniqs. He needs to get his job done. After that, if he dies, not a big deal. But this is so important for him to get open, because once he does, they're usually able to clear the shield, that loading place. I wanted to call him not loading still. And that angle. But they still have to deal with this mirror window. However, this is predictable, right? They know how to deal with this because they've dealt with it 2 rounds before, so they're familiar with it. It's just Yeti needs to stay alive, do his job, but it looks like he's getting flustered a bit on that, and that could be a little bit of a problem. But as long as they're able to do that and then clear Benji off the catwalk, which they didn't bring the Capitao for this time because they weren't sure what the site was going to be, so that could be a problem. That's where I see them running into a huge issue, is either not getting the wall open completely, which it looks like they might have gotten it done now, or dealing with Benji here. He's been such a thorn for them to deal with, and the Capitao was the only thing that helped push him into a position where they could kill him. Yeti does get a kill though, so this is fire for. Oh, this is all right. Soniqs win.
He just called it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see if you're right here. We still got a minute and a half to go, but Mirage currently holding in the 3v5 as they've lost both Loading and Dream to Yeti, who's become the hero inside of these late rounds with some excellent contributions and, more importantly, impact frags to push Soniqs over the finish line, according to you at least here.
Well, I would say throwing that, it was an impact frag, right?
So we'll see for Mirage now, as Nyx is going to take an incredibly aggressive position once again. He got found out last time, but he also wasn't preset for this when he attempted it, so still could sneak in at least a kill or 2. Grixer will spot out, of course, the position of Benji. That does not apply to Nyx, however. So Nyx will swing in, and a great find from him as he takes down Grixer and puts this round a bit more under the control of Mirage. That'll shift very quickly, however, as Benji is going to get dropped. The team is flooding in very quickly, but they don't suspect Thomas to be this deep into the site. He'll get traded out by Rex, and that leaves Nyx alone, but Nyx also brings the numbers down for the Soniqs. He'll be able to take out Yeti, and now it's him versus both Rexon and Super, potentially decide the map. We've also got no case plant coming in just as yet, but still 30 seconds for Super to finish that job. So not a huge amount of pressure sitting on the Soniqs roster just as of yet. They're hoping we would get an earlier push from Nyx, but now he's done it. He swung his way in, and Rexon will finish it off as the Soniqs take control in overtime of this match versus Mirage here on Clubhouse.
That round, absolutely the Yeti Rexon show. It was, I think, 2 or 3 for Yeti, 2 or 3 for Rexon. Just making it work. That's what you like to see. I mean, Rexon actually, Yeti should even get credit for where the